So hello and welcome. This is the first growth strategy podcast of 2021. I still find it strange even saying that. And when I write things in my diary, I still think it's 2020, but regardless. With the growth strategy podcast and live stream, what I try and do this week and every week is introduce you to people that I think will add genuine value to your business or career. We never come on just to plug stuff. It's genuinely people I think have stuff that's worth kind of sharing. Today's guest is no different. So I'm going to introduce you to Jeni in a second. And then over the next kind of 30, 40 minutes, we're going to share her story. She's going to tell us a lot about a lot of different kind of stuff. Really big on business networking, which is obviously really critical to everyone, but we'll go into that later. And hopefully, if you come along with us, please send in a message on any of the platforms. I'll answer them if I can. I can now see them in front of me. And if you've got any questions for myself or Jeni, please send them in. So Jeni, I'm just going to bring you in. Perfect. So you're now live. Would you like to say hi to everyone?
Hi, everybody. This is exciting.
So how's life? How's lockdown been for you?
It's good. It's been weird, like everyone. We're in a fun position of being first-time parents as well. I've got an 18-month-old. So when lockdown hit, she was 6 months. So we're still like trying to navigate how on earth to keep a tiny human alive. And then doing that whilst confined to your house is a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun in games. But we're all healthy. We're all like trying to find the good bits out of it, getting my husband to be able to work from home loads more than he would have means we get like family lunches and walks and stuff. So yeah, to be fair, I can't complain at all. Doing good.
So one of the things that I always try and open with, and it's almost that I don't like to interview people that I don't know, or at least know in some kind of context. For one, it's because my focus is Northeast England, and that's kind of what I play off. Unless it's a really big guest or they've got a massive following, in which case, of course, I'm going to make an exception because, of course, you would. But then, so I'd seen you pop up. We don't particularly know each other, although I have just done your online course. So I feel like we know each other. And we'll touch on that later. But it's almost, would you like to tell people a bit about yourself?
Yeah. So, well, I'm not from the Northeast originally. I've lived here for 7 years now, which makes me feel dead old. The fact I've done anything for 7 years. Been here 7 years. Originally from Carlisle, so I am northern. I'm a northern lass. Originally from a little village called Wetherall, just outside Carlisle. But I've lived all over, really. Moved when I was 18. I went off. Didn't know what I wanted to do with myself when I grew up. So I lived in Fiji with nuns.
You do look like that type who would travel the world.
I just make it up as I go along. Hence, ended up in Fiji, and did volunteer work in a deaf school for a bit, and then travelled. Ended up in Liverpool. Went to uni there. Loved Liverpool.
Which is my hometown.
Culture.
It's my hometown.
I could tell by your little accent. I was like, oh, he's got a bit of Scouse. Bit Scouse twang. When I talk to Scousers, I turn Scouse. I'm one of those people that sucks up people's
I can tell because I thought you were from the Northeast. And by the way, hi, Simon. I can see people starting to comment, so please comment.
I do. I soak up people's accent. It's because I've got kind of a non-accent. My mum's American, but grew up in South Africa. My dad was from the Northeast, so I've probably have got a bit of a Northeast twang anyway. But yeah, I was in Liverpool for 5 years. Absolutely loved it. Went back to Carlisle and then Northeast. So this is home now. Definitely home.
What did you do at uni?
Business and finance. Again, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So that seemed like a good, safe option. Okay. It covered a lot of bases. And the only thing I could really think of what I wanted to do was maybe have a sweet shop, because I loved to pick and mix when I was little. And I thought, to have a pick and mix would be lovely, a pick and mix shop.
See, I'll let you into a little secret. So last night I gorged myself on M&S Percy Pigs. It was technically Percy and Friends. And I feel a little bit sick today. So it's quite topical that you talk about.
Well, my lovely friend, Jordan, I'd said I miss pick and mix. And I'd posted something on Twitter. And then like a few weeks later, I got a little box through the mail from her. She sent us a pick and mix. You can order them online. So I gorged on that. Don't even feel bad about it.
I bet you they're not 10p anymore, though. Well, little paper bags.
Well, yeah, and you used to get them weird and that. Yeah.
COVID nightmare, though. All these kids digging their hand in.
I know, thinking about it wouldn't work now. But yeah, I love to pick a mix.
So one of the things that I always kind of ask people, because for me, this is all about like almost you sharing your story and your journey. And the reason why we kind of do that is that I interview a lot of business owners. And likewise from either Darlington or Liverpool and Northeast or Carlisle or wherever. it's often what you see in the media in terms of business owner is an Alan Sugar type. Okay, he's actually quite rough and ready as well. But you get my point. It's a certain character. And one of the things that I was always keen to kind of do is almost interview real people that have real stories to kind of tell, that hopefully, because this all goes onto YouTube, people might actually resonate with you. And actually, if you can do it, maybe they can do it. And actually, when you go through to explore people's story and how they kind of got to where they're at, I think it adds a lot of breadth and depth to your character kind of thing. And people always talk about personal branding, but actually the more they get to know about you and what you're about and your backgrounds and stuff, it's like, I'll ask you about the guitars in a second, although I now know they're not yours, but regardless. But actually, for what we're going to talk about is how you build those connections with people via networking. But actually, the more you share your story, and this will hopefully get out to about 18,000 people, you're helping to just develop those connections as well. And they might get a feel for who, they'd seen your name around, but maybe not heard you speak before. And it was just, that's why I was, keen to kind of, get people to share their stories and stuff.
No, totally agree. I think growing up, it wasn't until I was in my second year at uni, and I'd obviously took a gap year and traveled and then had another year doing whatever. So I was in my second year, I was 21 or so, something like that. I don't know. But that was the first time I had ever even thought, and this like moment where I was like, starting a business is actually something that I could potentially do. And it hadn't been on my radar all through school growing up. It hadn't been on my radar like traveling, and it just wasn't something that I felt someone like me would do. I don't know if it's as a woman, someone from a small town, a small village, someone who isn't from an affluent background necessarily. I haven't got millions of pounds in the bank just to start a business, because that's what rich people do. So I remember being at uni, they invited some alumni, and they were quite young, these guys. They're still going now at a company called Agent Marketing in Liverpool, and this guy called Paul came in and talked to us just like a normal person and shared his story of how he started his business. And that genuinely like changed my life and changed my view, and it just opened this like door and went, you could do this. And then all of a sudden there were just all these opportunities and ideas. And that's why probably straight out of uni, for a year out of uni, I started my first business. And I think it's massively important to share stories to hopefully unlock that little door for someone else.
Oh, cool. So what was the first business?
So it was a job I invented, Steve. So I fell into networking by accident while I was at uni. I was doing some voluntary work at a company just to get something on my CV. And he took me along to a networking event. And it was my first experience of networking. No one had ever told me about it, and I'd never been warned about it. And I was a bit hungover at the time. It was the day after Valentine's Day. And Valentine's Day at uni when you were single was a great night out. So I was a little hungover. And he took me along to this networking event, which was like in a really nice bar. And he told us, he said, don't tell them you're a student, you're the business development manager. And the company's called Milky Tea. It does CGI and animation, which I still to this day don't understand. And he was like, just talk to these like grown-ups in suits, these people that have got their lives together. And I was just given a name badge and told just to talk to them, and it was genuinely one of the most scariest things I've ever done. I hid in the toilets for most of the night. Didn't really speak to anybody, but I forced myself to go to another event and eventually built up that courage to approach a stranger, because we were all told stranger danger, don't speak to them. And then we start going into the world of business, and we're expected to know how just to talk to them. Yeah, so I eventually built up the courage and spoke to someone, and then I just fell in love with networking. Like the people that you're able to meet and get access to and chat to and learn from and hear their stories and hear their experiences and find out about their businesses. It was just, I just absolutely loved it. Anyway, I continued to network in Liverpool, and it was a massive part of the business culture there, going out and building relationships. And I found myself when I was networking, introducing people and like matchmaking them and going like, oh, you should speak to this person, you should speak to this person. And I also found that I'd chat to people who like stood in the corner on their own and were just like, I hate these things. I don't like these networking events. I don't know what I'm doing here. Or they didn't have time to do it. They didn't have they weren't big enough as an organization to employ a business development manager to do networking as part of their role. So I thought, right, I'm good at networking. I enjoy it. I love it. I love matchmaking people. I could do this for a lot of different people instead of just for one business. So I created a business where I was a full-time networker. So I used to go to 5-6 events every day, Monday to Friday.
Every day? That's
A lot.
insane.
It was very early, but very late night as well. Didn't pay for food or wine for like a year. But I used to go to full-time networking on behalf of a number of different businesses. So I took on a company as a client. I'd only have one from each industry. And then I'd do a corporate analysis on their business. So I'd really get to understand and them as an organization, their product, services, target market, who they were looking to meet, but also their culture and what they were about as a business and the kind of people they wanted to engage with and connect with. And then while they cracked on doing their day job and doing what they loved to do, which was running their business, I'd be out doing all the legwork. I'd obviously pay for my memberships of networking organizations, and I'd go out to all the events and meet people. And then anyone that I met that would be useful or interesting for any of my clients to chat to, I'd make those introductions. So it means that they were having that pre-organized one-to-one. So it made it a lot more time efficient for them.
No, cool.
So that was the first business. And
so how old were you at the time?
I was maybe 22.
Wow.
23 maybe. Yeah, a lot of fun. I learned a lot, got to go to, because the more networking you do, as you know, the more events you get invited to, and then you get invited to events that aren't actual events. They're like the opening of a new restaurant or fashion shows, but it's still networking. And the more people you know, the more people want to know you. So it was a really exciting time, but it was after a year, that was all I could do. I didn't want to talk to anyone after a year. I was
honestly, it sounds like, it's hard graft going to these things. I still remember the first event I went to in the Northeast after I moved up was there's an organization called NOF Energy, or now it's just NOF, and they do offshore energy kind of stuff. And I still remember going to an event at the Sage in Gateshead, going in, didn't know anyone, like not a single person, sat down at a table, and then it was to actually say to the person on your left just hello, and actually make that first kind of And then what's funny, because the next time you go to one of these things, you already know someone, so you kind of latch onto them. And something that kind of relates to what you said is that most people they think that networks are like just big circles and you have big groups of people and you know lots of people, but most networks are actually like pyramids. So the people like you and me and some others that actually know a lot of people and actually connect a lot more. And one of the big things I always talk about is that if you can find the kind of really well connected people, it can make a massive difference. Yeah. But it's a hell of a job to kind of. So what did you do after that? Well, how did you kind of move on?
So from there, my sister got engaged, and I decided I'd had enough of the full-time networking. I wanted to be with her for that process, and I was ready to kind of move back home. So after 5 years in Liverpool, went back to Carlisle, and I thought, right, I need to get a real job. I need to get, a proper job. So I'll go networking to meet some business people, because I didn't know anyone in the business community, and quickly realized that there was just nothing at the time. There was hardly any networking events available. There was maybe 1 or 2 in Carlisle a month, but that was about it. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 BNI chapters as well. So I decided to take everything that I'd learned from attending all these networking events and flip it and start hosting them. So this is where the second business came from. So I decided to set up again, but obviously completely different business model, different location, different business people. And now it was a networking organization. So it was hosting networking events. So I hosted 4 events a month. May 15 it was called.
Nice.
It's my birthday, so I got to have a party every year. So yeah, May 15 launched on the 15th of May, and we had a big launch event, and then I hosted 4 events a month. And businesses could pay to be a member, like they would, kind of any other networking organization, and they could come and go to as many as they want. And I'm not going to lie, it was tough. It was really, really tough. I think that first year, I remember once I hosted an event and like 1 person showed up. Yeah. And it just rips your heart out. We just got pissed, really, to be honest. We just got drunk and had a laugh, and it was fine. But it's really hard. And because at the time, I remember putting on events to try and teach people why they should be going networking, because it wasn't really part of the culture at the time. People networked, they built relationships, but they didn't necessarily realize that they were doing it. So the idea of physically going to a networking event seemed a bit alien, I guess. So it took a lot of time to really build those relationships, and a lot of trust needed to be evolved with the business community there. And that, you know, and I totally appreciate that, that in time people did join and they did come on board and they started attending events, and there was more than just me and a couple of others there, and I had a great time, and I loved that business, and I loved the business people I got to work with. And hosting events was so different, because you kind of become like this mum to all these other people, and you become someone like an agony aunt, you become a sounding board, someone that they can just vent to if they need to, especially entrepreneurs who work independently or on their own. So it was very different, and I learned so much from doing that. Again, didn't have really a clue what I was doing, made it up a lot as I went along, but you learn as you go that way, and I made a lot of mistakes, but I wouldn't make them again, so it was only a positive thing. And I've built some, you know, lifelong relationships out of it, and yeah, did that for nearly 5 years, I think it was.
Wow.
All in all,
I think that's almost when, because I think the first time I was exposed to you was on Startup Week, and I think you were a guest speaker, and same as I was, different. It was all pre-recorded this year because of COVID. But I think one of the things that there's certain people that you seem to resonate with, even though we'd never met. And I think my big one, and the one that always came to mind, is actually she was my first guest on this 40 odd guests ago, was Ashley King, that I think you know, from the Northeast. Anyway. And I think it's anyone who is willing to create something and put it out there. It is scary. It is hard to do. That even when you do a silly little live stream like this, where you talk to interesting people and stuff, when you actually press go live, it's daunting, because you're always putting yourself out there to get shot at. And actually, it's so much easier to not do it. And almost, you know, so I took a break when COVID was worse, and it was like, at what point is appropriate to come back? And you're second guessing yourself, and it's easy to fall into the trap and think, actually, I'm just not going to do it. So anyone that does this, and we'll go on to some of the things that you've done, I think it's more difficult than people think. You need to actually put yourself out there with something that you've created, and you want to share, because some people, you know, are going to slag it off, and it's just having the drive to say, no, I'm proud of this, and just keep going.
Yeah, I think you're never going to please everyone, but you know, like you say, pressing that button, or, you know, whatever it is that makes you so vulnerable to the world, especially when it's something you really care about. And I think that's why quite often people just don't try, because the fear of failure outweighs that. See, for me, my biggest fear is the fear of unfulfilled potential. It's that fear of not knowing what I could have done had I tried. That terrifies me way more than failing at anything. So, you know, I think I've had to train myself just to do it. And then if it doesn't work, which, you know, stuff for me hasn't worked in the past, but it's made me better at what I'm doing now because I've failed, and that's all you can take. And I don't think failure is even a thing. You only fail if you stop trying. You know, how can you lose a race that you're still in, kind of thing? As long as you just keep going, it doesn't really matter what you do. You just change the rules of the race, I guess.
I think you've just given me my soundbite for Twitter. That's it. You just
get in.
Nailed it. The end.
We're already like 10 minutes in already. Nailed it. There you go.
But no, it's true. It's true. So would you like to tell people about Networking KnoWho?
Yeah, so Networking KnoWho came from obviously my love of networking, my passion for connecting people and getting them to connect with each other through conversation. But after I had my 15 in Carlisle, I moved over to the Northeast, fell in love as you do, got married, and I ran a network over here, the Muscle Club. I was MD there for a few years. It had already been going for a number of years when I came in, and I had the absolute pleasure of running that for about 3 years, I think. And then I took a step back from networking, to be honest. I'd kind of, you know, being in the center of a network is intense. It's all consuming. It's 7 days a week. You know, even on my honeymoon, I was there with my laptop, you know, doing what you do. And I took a step back from it and ended up spending the last 3 years, 2-3 years, delivering business support with Sun and Software City, which was just amazing. The team there is fantastic, and I learned so much about tech as an industry, got to work with so many amazing businesses. But during my time there, I've always still talked about networking. It's still kind of really been in my heart. And one day in the office, I was explaining how I recommend events to people, how my brain kind of works. And I drew this doodle on the little whiteboard. And later on, David Dunn, who's the CEO, came in and was like, "What's that?" And I was like, "Oh, well, this is my little doodle," and I explained my doodle. And he was like, "That's a hypothesis. You need to go and get someone to look at that." So I was like, okay. So toddled off to Durham Uni and applied for them to take it on as a project for their MBA program in the business school. And they did. So they did some academic research into this doodle, this hypothesis thing.
So this is the networking ecosystem.
The networking ecosystem, yeah. So they did some research into the ecosystem to kind of prove that it existed, which it did, which was fantastic. And then a year later, I applied again because I wanted to do some more research into the implication of applying the ecosystem to a business. And then on the back of that, it's kind of lit a fire in us, I guess, to be like, oh, there's something there with this. This is exciting. This could really have impact. And I got pregnant and had a baby in August 2019. And while I was on maternity leave, decided, you know what? I need to do this. If I'm gonna take this time away from my baby to work, it needs to be working on something that really is like something I have to do. And decided, and it was really tough because I love that job and I love that place, but decided to leave Software City and go self-employed and take this leap of faith and kind of
scary, isn't it?
Everything, yeah. And especially I think becoming a mum where it's not just me anymore. In the past, if I kind of fucked up a bit, it was like, oh, it was fine. But now it's like, oh, I've got this little person that's relying on me. And, you know, you've suddenly got all these different responsibilities. So it felt very different this time. It felt a lot more serious, the decision. In the past, I'd always kind of gone, oh yeah, I'll do that. Like I've written a book before, like, oh, I want to write a book, so I'm going to write a book. And I want to do this, so I'll do this. But this time felt different. So, but made that decision. And then my husband took over parental leave literally the week we went on lockdown. Wow. And I'd kind of planned, you know, to launch this business, this Networking KnoWho, where I could teach networking skills and I could help businesses by creating networking strategies for them and help them be strategic in their approach to networking. And obviously the world closed, everyone's doors shut, networking just stopped. Everything I had in the diary was gone. And it was almost a blessing that it happened at the very beginning rather than, you know, me getting 6 months in and it happening, because it allowed me, and I think Dave having that time on parental leave, it gave me that freedom, that space to just be like, right, I didn't even have a desk at the time. I was literally just sat in the loft with my laptop on my knee. And I was like, right, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this in this new non-networking world? And had to pivot like everyone did. And, you know, I think it couldn't have been a better time. And it's worked out really well in that people have never needed networking more than they need it right now. And they can't do it the way that they've always done it. So we're having to be more creative. We're having to be more strategic. We're having to think in new ways of how we can build trust within our network and our relationships in order to keep our businesses alive and, you know, keep ourselves sustainable. Yeah. So yeah, it's been an interesting time, but
I was going to say, because before we started on the live bit, we were having a bit of a chat, and it was funny because when that exact same time, and everyone went on to Zoom, and I didn't even know what Zoom was. You know, most people didn't.
Never heard of it.
And it was at that point I kind of realized that everyone knows that online is going to be a big thing, and it is a big thing. And it was at that point I learned to do live streaming from scratch. I had some camera equipment, nothing else. And it was just to learn because I could see its potential just to hit a lot of people. And then the trick then becomes, what do you do to kind of put yourself out there that isn't offensive. It's not going to piss people off. It's not like the Steve Pugh show. And that's where I thought I'd help celebrate other people on their journey, because let's face it, people love to talk about themselves in a nice way, but you get my point.
Of course they do. Bloody love it. I love it. Who doesn't?
But it was almost when there was a fundamental market shift, people that could pivot and almost were smart enough to identify a gap and do that will succeed so much more than a lot of people that would just put their head in the sand. And it's from a business strategy point of view, because this, I guess, is a business strategy podcast. It's when you can identify things which make you unique, or your business unique, whatever. It's a talent that you have. So we're both not afraid to talk. And actually, so it's almost use that as a thing. You know, that's a superpower that a lot of people don't have because they hate talking, especially publicly. So almost from a business point of view, if people don't know who you are, they can't buy your stuff. Yeah. It's just facts. And it's that kind of thing. So I really empathize with what you're saying.
Yeah, I think for me as well, what I was trying to sell, especially in the beginning, was me talking. It was me training. You know, in the beginning, it was me training in public, you know, standing up in front of people. And I'm an extrovert. I love being around people and I get my energy from them. So having that taken away and having to learn everything, you have to learn over, like you say, like I didn't know what Zoom was. And then having to convert training content that works in a group setting to being online, it's so different because I mean, I use some puppets and that, my daughter's puppets. I use them to like, you know, try and keep people. We all have Zoom fatigue and it's hard work sitting, listening to people chat on Zoom for hours on end. So trying to make content that's informative and educational, but still is engaging and interactive remotely, massive learning curve. And then similarly, like I invested in some software, some video editing software called Camtasia. No, is it? Yeah, Camtasia, called Camtasia. And I remember it was like, it's £250. And I was like, oh, that's a lot of money. Yeah, that's like, to me, well, that's a lot of money. And especially when I was first starting out and I hadn't even bought a desk yet. I've got a desk now, I'm fine. But at the time, and I was like, oh, this is so much money, blah, blah, blah.
Can we talk about that? Because I mentioned, I did a recap of my first year in business just before Christmas with a guy that I know started his business same time. And it's the difference between, so I started officially October 19. And it was almost for the first 6 to 8 months. Yes, you earn a little bit of money, but everything is a big purchase. It's almost, you know, exactly what you're saying with the software. But then actually when I had a few retainers and the money started to come in, I still wasn't paying myself anything, but actually I was generating cash that I could then reinvest in all of this magical stuff. But there was a distinct difference between having no money, shoestringing it, doing everything you humanly can to actually, oh, you know what? I'm going to spend £700 on sound blankets to reduce the noise in my video. It's that, you know, but it changes over time. And for me, it was almost 8 months or so after I'd properly started. So actually to hear someone else go through the same thing, again, if there's someone else that started 2 months ago, they won't be like, oh, fuck, I've got no money. Is it always going to be like this? And the truth is, no, should get better over time.
I think it's a mindset thing because you backing yourself. When you spend money, in life, it's just on stuff and it's things. But when it's on your business, it almost kind of puts a little bit more pressure on you to make sure that you don't waste it. But it's also a psychological thing in that every time you do spend, you know, 100 quid on an IKEA desk and, you know, and it's like, but that's me going, yeah, Jenny, you know what? You deserve that desk. Damn right I do. And like you are reinvesting that in your business, in yourself. And at the beginning you're right. It was like, everything was like it felt like a massive investment. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it changes quickly. And I mean, I'm 10 months in now and I've just signed off on the development of a new platform I'm building, which is a lot more than 250 quid. So, that's by far the biggest amount of money I've spent on anything. And that's going to be for the business. And that feels like it feels like the same way that it felt when I spent 250 quid on a bit of software.
See, I've got something similar launching soon. And for me, it's all about reduce the tax bill, get you further along. But it's money that if I said to my wife, actually, I'm going to spend this on something, she'd be like, oh. It's like, no, it's not real money. It's like business money. Real money.
Yeah, it's like, it's not real. It's fine. It's the business. You're reinvesting it in. It doesn't count. It's not like, oh, I'm spending 12K on I don't know, a new sofa or something. It's like, no, you reinvest in whatever it is you've already made back into the business for a strategic purpose as well, because it's not just a thing to have. It's investing in something that can result in a lot more of additional revenue moving forward as well. So it's a completely different, it feels a lot different.
People are commenting that your energy is unrivaled. So you've got some...
It could be the shirt. It's quite a bright shirt. I thought I'd be a bit bright today. Yeah, it's not very nice outside. So
you recently launched a networking course on Udemy.
Yeah.
Would you both like to tell people your thinking behind why you wanted to do it? And I'll kind of riff off that. And then almost the process of going through it. Is that cool?
Yeah, of course. So again, that was something that I never would have, had it not been for lockdown, I wouldn't have probably had the time to sit down and really think about doing something like that. As someone whose business was initially going to be based around delivering training, there's only so many hours in the day. There's only so many times that I can deliver the same training course without wanting to kill myself. So having that time to be able to go, right, well, how can I create a product that I can generate passive income from?
Scalable.
How can I create something that's going to allow me to get my message out to a larger volume of people in a shorter amount of time that's still going to generate revenue and not going to take up all the hours in the day? And that's where the idea of creating a course that's pre-recorded, and hence the investment in the editing software, being able to create this course that I create it once, I film it once, edit it once, and then can sell it millions of times if I wanted to, at no additional cost or time taken from me. Just like, I remember thinking, well, that's just good sense. That's just efficient, isn't it? And I like it. I like when things are efficient, Steve. So I went out.
You know what I've just noticed?
What?
Because for everyone who's watching this, I've actually done Jeni's course. You talked about on LinkedIn, so I actually bought it and did it and run through the whole thing. And actually, interestingly enough, it's probably good consumer feedback. I started it on my desktop at home in my office, but actually you can watch it on your phone whilst you're doing, out and about. It's a very usable kind of resource. But it was in something you just said, you put on a different accent when you presented the course to how you're speaking now.
Did you?
You did.
But that's probably because I'm talking to you and your Scouse, Steve. So my Scouse comes out. I'm like, I want some chicken. Like, I've got a Scouse. That's my awful Scouse accent.
But it was, you had in a nice way, but your telephone voice on, and I only just twigged when.
And this is how it is. So I think, like, I don't know if you're the same, but when I'm just talking to a camera, you're just a lot more, and you still try and be energetic and things, but it's not the same as like us having a conversation now.
I much prefer being in person. It's when you get the vibe.
I do, yeah. But if not being in person and then just talking to a screen with no one else in the room, and then there's having that conversation like we are now in the middle, and this just, so my accent is, I'm a chameleon. We'll call me a chameleon.
But I thought the course was really interesting because basically what you go through is almost the development of a networking strategy.
Yeah.
It's all on different things, lots of worksheets. I know you've got a worksheet, Chung.
I love a worksheet. I sing a song about worksheets.
And the one thing that got me actually, because obviously I've done business development in the past, I guess I still do it now. I can't remember what the figure was, but it was almost, if you took your hourly time and you do one a week and you do this, and it was like 42 grand a year that you effectively spend on networking. And it's like, it's a lot of time and effort that, again, as a sole trader or, independent freelancer kind of thing, your time is everything. And again, if you're going to do it, you have to get value from it. You have to know what you're doing. And I'll be honest, I don't think most people do. I think they kind of just do stuff just because they've always done stuff. And it's, so I thought it was really interesting.
I think that's one of my goals, is to get businesses to take networking seriously and to give it the same respect it deserves as other marketing functions. So businesses have social media strategies. When social media first came out, they didn't really take it seriously. It was like, oh, we'll get a young kid in to tweet some stuff. Whereas now, obviously, because of the data that it enables you access to, people take it obviously extremely seriously. And return on investment is very tangible when it comes to online marketing, social media, a lot of other marketing functions as well. But I think because people don't necessarily always see in terms of like financial return on figures and facts and numbers, what you get back from networking. They don't think of it strategically. Hence, obviously, the course, which is all about how to be strategic in your approach to networking and looking at that return on investment from networking activities. And what are you actually spending? What do you want back in return? What are your objectives for going networking? Why are you even attending events? Do you want to get sales? If so, who do you want to sell to? Do you want to, accessing knowledge and networking for knowledge is probably the most powerful form of networking, and creating a diverse network as well. So networking with people outside of your industry, outside of your areas of interest, in order to learn from them and spark innovation and spark new ideas. There's so many benefits.
I still think as like a freelancer type thing, the most valuable thing that you have is the idea. And obviously it's the execution of the idea, but it's almost, that is the big thing that I think, yeah, you're completely right, that you get from networking. You can also get from places like TED Talks, or just exposing yourselves to different sectors, different backgrounds, different cultures that you don't normally interact with. Because from the same group that you've seen for the last 10 years, it's probably all the same stuff. But the one thing which I told you this, that I really kind of hit a light bulb when you said it, and it was the fact that when you develop a network and you get to know people, you also, if you make a good impression, you actually get to meet everyone that person will ever meet and has ever met.
Yeah.
Because if you have something valuable, that person will tell everyone in the future, actually, Jenny's really good at this. And people they've met in the past. And I was like, because it was true, but I'd never heard it. And then one thing that's just twigged now is that with anyone's brand, you want to be seen as an authority and an expert on the topic. And I watch a lot of stuff, and I don't know anyone that is an expert on networking. You see loads of social media people, whatever, but I think there's a real niche there that you can go hard on. And, you know, I know you've got speaking to lots of different things, but I do think there's something there, but you can actually back it up with evidence and history and stuff. I think you're onto a winner, which is good.
Thanks, Steve. Well, you've just made my day. Not that you hadn't made it anyway, inviting me on your show, but you've just made my day. And interestingly, actually, last week, I just came across some people in academia who were doing research into the power of networking for career development, for innovation. And I got super excited and proper geeky. And I've never been one for like music bands and celebrities and that and stuff. I've never been one for
just
that.
Networking.
But like I turned into like one of those like proper super fans. I stalked them on LinkedIn and I was like adding them. It was on a Sunday and I found their email addresses. I was emailing them and I was like, please, can I talk to you? I'd love to find out about your research. And like, you know, the fact that there's people who are doing, you know, recognized research into what networking can do and the power of it and its effects. And there's just so many more benefits. I've got a call with one of them tomorrow and I'm very excited. I'm such a geek, but I love it.
Cool. So I'm conscious that we're 37 minutes in because we can both talk. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's cool. Or whisper. But there's two questions I ask everyone every week kind of thing. And I actually, in some ways, think this is the most valuable piece of content. And then completely selfishly, in about 6 months' time, I'll recycle this on a Sunday and put it out. But it's the best bit anyway. Would you be happy to share with the audience what's the best piece of advice you've ever had?
The best piece of advice I've ever had. So there's a couple. The one that I use a lot for others is one of the best bits of advice I was given is that there's two kinds of people in the world. There's men and women. That is the only difference between people. Everyone puts their shoes and socks on one at a time. We all worry about stupid things, cholesterol and our weight. And it doesn't matter what car you drive. It doesn't matter what your job title is, how much money you've got in the bank. People are just people. And they want to be happy and they want to enjoy themselves and they want to be interested and excited. And especially in business, we often see people who are certain levels of success and think of them as being unobtainable and
special.
Scary. Yeah. And I think just remembering that we're all just people. That's one that's really carried me well. And another one is make sure that you're the best dressed person in the room. That's a good one, Steve, as well. You know, if you're at a meeting or something.
I must have, but it was, so when I remember going on holiday years ago, it was to Brazil. But anyway, James Caan, that used to be on Dragon's Den, in his book, he talks about investing in yourself. So in the same way you're talking about investing in your IKEA desk, etc. If you're either going for that next level of job or for a certain client, it's a certain thing, invest the money, especially if it's tax deductible. in, you know, nice clothes and outfits, and really invest in all aspects of your business, including yourself.
Yeah. And what makes you feel good? If it makes you feel confident, and, you know, have you read 12 Rules for a Chaos-Free Life?
No.
Bloody wonderful. You should read it. It's really good. Anyway, there's one of them and it's about confidence, and it's about how lobsters, when they fight, the lobster that wins releases serotonin. It's one of the happy hormones. I think it's serotonin. Anyway, when you release serotonin, you stand up tall. So lobsters that win all the fights stand up tall, so the other lobsters know not to mess with them. Anyway, humans, when we do something that makes us feel good and confident and we win, or we do something well, we get a hit of serotonin, we stand up straight and we're like confident. And if nice clothes or a nice car or whatever it is make you feel good and confident, then that sends a signal to the rest of the world. So finding ways in which you can give yourself a hit of serotonin, and you can do it by actually remembering things you've achieved in the past as well. That's a little tip. So if you write a little list down of all the stuff you've ever achieved, and then you're feeling a bit intimidated by a situation, read the list and you'll go, I'm awesome. What are you on about? And then you'll like be confident. Sorry, I went off on a tangent about lobsters.
That's right. People enjoy it. It's good. And the other question is, if you were to give advice to your younger self, and it could be the person at uni, it could be the person growing up in Carlisle, whichever, what would it be?
Advice to my younger self would be to not be afraid to be who you want. I think when I was younger, I probably was someone who I felt I should be at the time, like others expected me to be, or, you know, and I think as I've gotten older and, you know, you experience more things and life changes, I'm actually doing things that make me into a person I want to be. So things like I gave up alcohol nearly 3 years ago now. And that was actually a really big decision for me, because it affects your relationships with people, because you don't have that social, you don't go out drinking anymore. And I was always a big party girl. Everyone that knows me I used to party.
I can tell.
Like my man. Yeah. I'm still the life and soul, but I just remember it the next morning now, which is nice. So making these decisions and changes in my life to be who I want rather than who I felt I should be, and not being afraid of that. And I think obviously who I want to be now will change in 10 years. I'll want to be someone else, and just to be open to that and be excited for that. So I think if I could tell myself 10 years ago, just be whoever it is you want, don't worry about other people, because if they're not the right people to accept you, then they're not the right people to have in your life anyway. And that I think that applies to business just as much as to personal life. To do what you feel is right for yourself, your business, your colleagues, your staff, whoever, and following your gut and following your heart on it. That's the best thing you can do.
Almost, because one of the things that I try and do is almost everyone has like an idealized version of themselves of who they would love to be, that kind of dream person. And truth be told, in the first kind of 2 lockdowns, I kind of let my, because I used to be in really good shape, but I kind of let my fitness slip. I think a lot of people did, because I play basketball and it was all stopped because of COVID and stuff. And actually it was almost with the turn of the year, I thought, actually, now I'm going to start going running again. And the thing that almost gets me going is almost that I always think, well, the dream ideal version of myself, say on Sunday it was -3, it was bloody freezing. Would they get up and go for a 10K run? And they would. So it's like, I'm going to do it. And it's almost just trying to become the person that you want to become, to replicate in their actions.
Yeah.
And I don't particularly drink anymore. I can have fun without it. But then again, I don't mind letting loose once in a while, but I empathize with what you're saying. It's cool. So before we kind of wrap up, is there anything you want to talk about or plug before we go?
Yes, I do, Steve, now that you mention it. Well, as I mentioned before, I'm just about to start development on this new platform, and the platform is going to be an network and event listings website that allows users to answer a quick questionnaire, and the platform will recommend which events they should strategically be attending. So it's kind of like a digital version of what I do in terms of consultancy, and it allows them to keep up with what events are happening in the Northeast, what networking opportunities are there, but more importantly, which ones are going to be the most appropriate for them to attend for their objectives. So that's the platform that's hopefully going to be launching in the next 3 months or so.
What's it called?
It's going to be called, they're working on
Surprise.
the brand as well. Yeah. So if you do want to keep up with what's going on, get yourself onto networkingknowwho.com, which is networking, KNOWHO.com. And then you can sign up to get my newsletter, which hasn't started going out yet, but pop your little email address in there, and then you can keep up with all the networking news of what's going on. Yeah.
Brilliant plug.
That's my little plug, my plug of the day.
But no, it makes sense. But I think that the whole point for me for this, it's people who watch this will be in a similar position to both of us. So that it's not just about, some people might not have a need for a networking strategy, but they will appreciate seeing a similar entrepreneur at a similar level. I think it's a massive thing to almost have the bravery to create something that's online and scalable, but actually, doing it is ballsy. That the easy option is not to do, but I recognize that. But again, I think a lot of other people will, that they'll see that hopefully, you're someone to watch, you're putting yourself out there. Some people will love what you do and some people won't. And it's almost having just keep going and just find your own kind of niche and network and stuff. But I've, definitely enjoyed this chat. It's been really good to kind of catch up, especially through lockdown. We don't get to speak to other people. So I just enjoy kind of doing this. And I'll certainly kind of keep an eye out for what you do next. And I'll get you back on when you launch the thing and we'll just talk about it. And no, I appreciate your time.
No, thank you so much for having me. I've really had an absolute ball and could talk to you for ages. So I'll definitely be back. So,
cool. And then just for you and everyone else, so what I do now is, this is live on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and stuff. But I clip it up on YouTube. All the interviews go on there. So there's like 40 odd interviews from lots of different people. I clip it up, take the audio out, do some clever stuff with it. Then it goes as a podcast on iTunes and Google and Spotify and stuff. And just try and share interesting stories of interesting people. Hopefully this is of interest to you. If you like the sound of Jeni, I'm sure connect, follow her stuff. And Jeni, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Cool. Bye. I'm sure I'll speak to you soon. All right, cheers. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.